Okay, I'm just going to get started. It's 9 o'clock. So hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, which is AI, Before You Run, Are You on the Right Road? I'm Jason Bullen. I'm Head of Practice for Data Management at Agile Solutions, and I'll be chairing today in absence of our CEO, Steve Whiting. So we're really pleased that you could join us for what promises to be an insightful discussion on AI readiness. And we're going to touch on topics such as how to get started, the key foundations you need in place, and what good looks like before you accelerate your AI journey. Before we get started, I just want to cover a few housekeeping points. So we're going to run this for about 30 minutes. We'll have time at the end for some Q&A. So if you have any questions, just please drop them into the Q&A box as we go. And the session's been recorded, so if you miss anything or you want to revisit at a later date, you'll be able to access it post this meeting. And I think we'll just get started. So this morning, I'm joined by two fantastic speakers who bring a wealth of expertise in AI and data strategy. So first up, we have Ben Howarth, who's Head of Practice for AI, and he'll be kicking things off by unpacking the foundations of AI literacy, covering where to start and what you need to know. And accompanying Ben, we have Mel Hodge, who's our Head of Practice for Data Strategy and Governance, who will then guide us through the practical steps of getting started, identifying gaps, and building out AI capabilities. So we're just going to jump straight into the discussion. So Ben, over to you. The big question is, how do organizations even know where to start with AI? And what do we mean by AI literacy? And why does it matter?
Morning, Jason, and thank you, and good morning to our attendees. So the question around literacy really does start with awareness. AI is in our everyday lives now. It's not something we're going to be able to get away from. But awareness is absolutely key to your literacy. So where is AI? Where do I find it? Is it being used? And the answer to that is yes. So most of us probably have a film account, which gives us subscriptions, and we get notified about, oh, this latest release is about to come out, or there's something which you've watched before, and there's a new release or an existing series which has come back into format, and they want to advertise it to you. They're using AI and ML in the background to do that. So we're affected by it every day. And in our business world, most of us will use Outlook. And Outlook now has done for probably about 12 months now, got a piece which is focused and unfocused. But that unfocused piece is driven by, in effect, ML, machine learning and AI. So you're clicking on emails, you're responding to those emails, those ones are the ones you want to see. The ones you ignore, delete, or just file away, they're the ones that you don't want to see. So they're unfocused. And as it comes into Outlook, it's making that decision for you. Many times we've had conversations with people in the past where they say, oh, don't forget, check your junk box just to make sure my email hasn't gone into junk. Now you have to also say, check your junk box, but also make sure I'm in focus. Otherwise, those emails can sit in the background for as long as it takes that user to actually get through their inbox. And working in the busy world we do, most people will have 300, 400, 500, maybe more unread emails sitting in the background. And you could have just fallen into that box. So that's awareness and how it becomes into literacy. So I become literate in understanding where AI is and how we're using it. There's a real key piece in the background of this, which is also around shadow AI. So it's on one of these bullet points and it's towards the bottom, but shadow AI is a really important part. So shadow AI is when we as a business do not realize that AI is influencing our outcomes. And that could be because somebody is simply using it in the background. Somebody is not following our policies. Somebody is literally making it or using it for illicit gains. It could have just dropped into the background. It could be a bad actor, as we call them. And that's shadow AI, something happening in the background. So the more aware we become, the more literate we become, the less opportunity for that shadow AI to take on. There's a big debate really around what is ML and AI. Well, AI started through ML and ML started through decision trees. So my first encounter with decision trees was in a sales environment where we used to have a decision tree and what we term today as a funnel, and we used to take our customers through that decision tree. ML is an automated version of that, and it uses probability. So what's the probability of the answer that somebody is going to give me to that question? And if it's a good outcome, I turn left, or if it's a bad outcome, I go right. AI is one step further, and AI takes into account things such as indexing. So that's keywords that are used in phrases from our training data or from when we talk to a chatbot, and vectors. And vector is the distance between those indexes. And we can control that by something which is called a temperature. So temperature just basically means how close or far away you want to get from peak to peak. So the lower your temperature, the wider the span, the more indexes you'll take into account, and the less distinct the response will be coming from that engine. Obviously, therefore, if you turn the temperature right up and you make that a very small sphere of control, it may only touch one index, and therefore it won't join multiple bits together. Putting all that into real life, we go back to our film titles. A film can have a title, it can have an actor. The title will be one index, the actor will be another, the next actor will be another, and so on and so forth. We've got genre, type. These are all indexes, and then by the temperature, we can start scanning across those indexes and we'll pull in more films, either where that actor has been before or in that genre. So we start to create basically what's a probability model, but we see it as artificial intelligence or AI. Now, this is all great, but there's a real key part when we're talking about it from a business point of view in understanding the business users' use case and their requirements, and that getting through to the back end and to the technical teams. We need to know that when the front end business people talk about a genre, the back end technical teams understand how that influences the index and the model, and they make sure they're using the right model. So there are lots of different models. I'm sure many of you are probably aware of ChatGPT, and at the moment we're on model version 4 across the board, and ChatGPT 4.x, there are somewhere in circa a region, I would like to say about 30 different models currently in play. And there's versions obviously before all of those. So we're stacking them up to close to probably 100 models which are available at any one point in time from one source. So those are the important bits, and getting that all to talk and work right is the impact it has then on your customer and how your customer will see your business. So that opens up a big playing field. And in the UK and within the EU, they have decided to attempt to put a framework around this using these 5 pillars. So the 5 pillars is around data security. Customers need to know that their data is secure, as it always has been. They don't want to see PPI, e.g. their name, out in the open space and coming up in the response from a chatbot for a simple question. Customer fairness. We still need to treat every single customer fairly, regardless of what it is that we're actually using our AI or ML to do. It needs to be transparent. So when our chatbot or our ML gives an answer, we need to be able to show how we got to that answer. It might just be simple maths, but we still need to be able to show that to a customer. And we need to give those customers the ability to contest those responses. So the right of contestability. And that's to say that data is wrong or remove it. And finally, accountability. Now, accountability is probably one of the key pillars that sits there because there's 2 sides to it. The first side is the business. The business needs to take accountability for its AI and its chatbot and its models. And that's really, really key. There's a great example, which was from Air Canada. They put in a chatbot in order to try and save some time on their telephone line. So rather than sitting in a holding queue, you could go to their website, you could interact with their chatbot, ask it simple questions, and it would be able to give you the answers. But they forgot to train it in one thing, which was bereavement. So a customer went to that website, they started interacting with that chatbot, and they asked the question, what can I do if I have a bereavement in the family? The chatbot had never been trained. It didn't know how to answer that. So it just went for this simple of make the customer happy by giving them a free flight. Now, as you can imagine, that went out and it went through to a few different people, some people doing it for real and some people probably just chancing their arm to get a free flight. However, it ended up in court as Air Canada decided not to honour those flights. The judge actually ruled in favour of the individuals, saying that Air Canada's responsibility was to own that chatbot, to own its outcomes and to make sure it's trained in exactly the right way, and should never have offered something that Air Canada weren't prepared to support. So that's a great example of accountability within the business world, and it's a strong lesson for all of us to learn. With modern EU, we're now also looking at fines if you're found guilty, and I believe it's up to about 35 million or 7% of your revenue. So it's substantial fines. The other side to accountability is your personal use. So you personally must become accountable. So we always insist that people follow a business policy. That policy may be not to use certain engines which are out there, such as ChatGPT or Gemini. There's reasons that businesses don't want you to use that, and that could be because it's seen as shadow AI. But it's your responsibility. You are accountable for your actions, and making sure that if you do use these tools, you use them responsibly and safely. So to the best of your ability, don't put in IP, don't put in customers' names. I think that's a bit of a whirlwind tour over the top of awareness and literacy. If there's any questions, please put them in the Q&A, and I'll do my best, as I'm sure Mel will as well, to answer them. Otherwise, I'll hand back to yourself, Jason, and thanks very much.
Thank you, Ben. That was extremely insightful. So Ben's already beat me to it. I can already see there's some questions coming into the chat, but just keep them coming in and we'll cover them at the end. But let's just crack on. So next up, we have Mel Hodge, who's going to take us a step further into getting started. So Mel, AI readiness isn't just about technology. It's also about maturity, skills, and strategy. Where do organizations often struggle, and how can they bridge the gaps?
Morning, everyone. Thanks, Jason. Thanks for that, Ben. It's very interesting. It gives me a nice lead in. So I think it's clear that AI is transforming the way we work, make decisions and create value. And it's really easy to feel that you're being left behind when every other organisation is jumping forward and getting started. But before you rush to deploy your AI, you need to ask yourself a few questions. So are you ready for it? And what do you need to do to start well? I like to tell an old joke at this point about asking for directions, and the response being, well, I wouldn't start from here. So understanding where your here is absolutely critical. Today, I want to explore how the two data governance disciplines actually interact together to work together to bring organisations into the AI world and prepare in the right way. And AI is only as good as the data that powers it. So without strong data governance, it's unreliable, untrustworthy, and even risky. And once AI is in play, you need that AI governance over the top to ensure that it's ethical, explainable, and aligned with your values. So before you can govern data or AI effectively, understand where you start today. And this is where you would use a maturity assessment. A data maturity assessment helps you to understand your gaps and your strengths. So are your data quality controls strong enough? Do you have clear accountability for AI decisions? Do you know where your data comes from? All of those sorts of good things that good data governance will give you. And then also understanding where you're starting from allows you to set realistic priorities. So without knowing what your current capabilities are, you might jump ahead too fast or focus on the wrong things, tackling things that you're not ready for, or maybe trying to take on too much. So wasting effort and energy, and a good priority will allow you to sort of deliver value really quickly. And you also need to align your stakeholders on that journey. So a maturity assessment allows you to sort of get a shared understanding across your leadership team, across your IT teams and your data teams about what they need to improve. And it also gives you the ability to measure your progress over time. So with that baseline, you'll know that your governance efforts are working. So I like to think that an AI maturity assessment acts a bit like a GPS for your AI journey. And it doesn't just tell you where you want to go, it ensures you start from the right place and take the smartest route forward. By assessing your data and AI maturity up front, you can avoid costly mistakes, blind spots and governance failures, and instead you set the foundation for your proper, trusted, responsible AI that delivers real value. So if we look at AI governance before we get into AI, if you think about AI being the engine, I'm keeping with the car analogies and the road analogies here, but as you'll see, if AI is the engine, then data is the fuel. So without high quality, well-managed data, even the most advanced AI models will suffer. And good data governance ensures your data quality is right and ready. AI models must be trained on accurate, complete and relevant data to avoid biased or misleading outputs. You need to understand where that data comes from. So you need your data lineage and transparency in place. So you must know where your data comes from, how it's been processed and who's actually responsible for it. and compliance and security. So the regulations Ben's already touched on, like GDPR and other AI specific laws, require us to protect that personal data and ensure fair processing and maintain transparency. And that's not changed, and that's going to get stronger and more evolve as the future, as we get into the future, as the EU and the UK start to establish where they really want to go with this new technology. And then there's data accessibility and usability. So AI, just as we do, needs access to the right data at the right time and in the right format. And governance ensures that data's there and it's available and shareable and well controlled. So without governance, you can see that AI can become a bit of a black box, producing unpredictable or harmful decisions. And then once you've got that quality, high quality, well-governed data, you need to govern the AI itself. And AI governance ensures that the models are fair and unbiased. So AI must not amplify discrimination or reinforce any existing biases in the data. There's a good example of when they were training DALL-E to draw pictures of people. And one of the test cases was draw people at work. So it drew basically one set of people. And when they analysed it, they realised that actually they hadn't removed some of the biases. So they put in all sorts of diverse business rules to help the AI become more diverse. And unfortunately, it still fails. It doesn't draw older women at work, which is obviously a subject closer to my heart. So there's plenty of younger people, plenty of different people from all around the world. But yes, no older women. Anyway, so that's my little anecdote. Transparent, explainable. So AI you must understand why AI has made the decision it's made, and if you can't explain it, then you can't trust it, and it must be accountable and compliant. Ben's already talked through the Air Canada example. So you need to know who's responsible if AI makes a bad decision, and governance ensures that you can trace accountability and comply with regulations. And then the real key thing, and this is for people that have maybe already started their AI journey, you need to monitor continuously what's going on. AI models can drift, degrade, and be exploited. So AI governance includes that regular testing and validation and oversight that's just necessary to make sure that your AI is still acting like you expect it to, and it's within the tolerances that you would want it to be. So AI governance is about making sure that your AI aligns with your human values, with your business ethics, and adheres to legal requirements. So without AI, without governance, AI can do more harm than good. So bringing all that together, how does AI governance and the data governance work together? So basically, AI governance relies on data governance as the foundation, because bad data leads to bad AI. But AI governance adds that extra layer of protection over the top that ensures that the models behave responsibly and ethically. So to prepare for the right way, organizations really must get your data foundations first. I am a bit of a data governance fan anyway, so absolutely foundational data governance in there, data management, get all of that working, and then you implement your AI governance, monitoring your models for ongoing fairness, transparency, and any ethical concerns, and ensure you keep your humans in the loop. So AI augments human decision making, not replacing it entirely. So in conclusion, data governance and AI governance are not checkboxes. They're not just a one-off project or exercise. They're critical enablers of your trustworthy AI. And if you want AI that is ethical, reliable, and effective, you must get the data right first, and then govern AI responsibly. And the organizations that do that and do that well are really unlocking the full potential of AI. And they're not just doing it quickly either. They're doing it safely and sustainably. So that's me. Thanks, Jason. Back to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mel. And again, just one last reminder for me about questions. Just drop them into the Q&A and we'll tackle them at the end. But moving on. So now, as organizations move forward with AI, it's crucial to assess progress and address challenges along the way. So Ben and Mel, let's talk about how businesses can track their AI journey. How do they listen to their customers? How do they monitor maturity, identify gaps, and more importantly, resolve them?
Sure, Jason, I'll go first if you like, Mel. So first point is you're not that old. That's why you don't appear in that picture, Mel, in the background. But yeah, so complaints literally need to become a business's friend. So, Mel's discussed there about how we continue to monitor our models and our AI applications as they're sitting out there. But the real test is from your customers. And if your customers find things which are wrong and they're good enough to actually raise a complaint, then there is something that we need to go away and investigate. So complaints do become your friend from an AI point of view. if your model's not giving the right answer or it does something untoward, then there's something wrong in the background. So monitor your complaints, understand them, and go back. And it falls into that next point there, which is monitoring and transparency. So continuous monitoring of models is so important. And the transparency of how you got to that answer is absolutely essential. And it helps you answer those complaints back to that customer. So, for me, again, I've said it before, but complaints do become your friend. Mel?
All right. Okay. So tracking maturity. So we sort of touched on starting out in the right place, but understanding that maturity baseline when you begin is really important, because it allows you to sort of understand the sort of the size of the journey that you're about to undertake. So if you're trying to change your maturity, drive your maturity up, you create your roadmap around building out those components that are going to move you up. So the opportunity to sort of get in some policies and all those sorts of good things to allow you to grow your AI maturity. But then you've also got something to reflect back on. So once you've actually implemented the changes that you wanted to make, you can remeasure and you can demonstrate that the changes that you've made within your organization has actually made a difference. And that way you can sort of track your benefits, you can show your evolving maturity, and it's a great way of getting that further investment, because you're showing that you're delivering value really quickly. We particularly like an MVP approach at Agile, obviously, as we are Agile. So we like to take an MVP approach, which allows you to sort of deliver value quickly, deliver small pieces of change, getting those marginal gains moving all the time, demonstrating back to your leadership that it's worth investing in taking bigger and bigger steps forward. So I think it's really key that maturity becomes part of something you do around here. You're constantly measuring, you're constantly striving to sort of evolve and grow and become more capable and bring in new facilities and new functionality within your AI and your AI teams. So Ben, back to you for mitigations.
Back to myself for mitigation, sure. So service maintenance and maintenance for tools. So we've said it multiple times through here, but it is so important that you monitor your applications. When they're created, your data scientists spend a lot of time looking at training data, making sure that training data doesn't have bias in it, making sure that the tool will give the outcome that you expect. And that drives all the way back to the very first piece about your business teams being able to talk to your technical teams. So what's in those business requirements? And it drives all the way through the process from end to end. But that maintenance, that monitoring, which Mel and I have both touched on quite a few times now, is so important. You need to carry on testing your applications, measuring your customers' complaints, and making sure that that tool is doing and delivering as you expect. Else, you either need to go through a retraining process or potentially replace it or remove it. There's a final piece in there as well, which Mel, you're probably best from your point of view around GDPR and the expansion to GDPR. So I'll leave you to update people.
Okay, yeah. So the UK has taken the approach of a federal centralised or decentralised approach to regulation, which means all the individual regulators, so Ofgem, Ofcom, all those sorts of people, will actually have for monitoring the sort of the rollout and use of AI within their own spheres. So companies need to actually sort of work with their own regulator to make sure that they're adhering to that. So the UK have provided the 5 pillars, which act like guardrails, but the EU are absolutely determined to drive forward with much more comprehensive regulation. So and new pieces of regulation are coming out all the time, and new changes are happening all the time, or case law is gradually building up. So there are constant and flexible changes, and GDPR will also continue to grow. So there'll be around sort of the management of personal and sensitive information and all those sorts of things. That'll actually evolve and develop as time goes on. So it is very important that part of your AI governance is actually monitoring and engaging with the various regulators that you're adhered to, but also to the wider picture. And if you have any sort of multi-jurisdictional business, if you have different teams maybe working from abroad, that there is different legislation in different parts of the world, and it is up to you to make sure that you are absolutely aware of that. And it could be that you're legally using ChatGPT on your phone in the UK, but you go somewhere else in the world and actually suddenly it's no longer legal. So you do need to make sure that that you're completely aware of what pieces of legislation are in what part of the world and what might actually affect you, and keep an eye on what's coming on the horizon, because not knowing or not preparing won't be a defence. It'll be part of the case against you in actual fact. Yeah, so it's really important to just keep a check on what's going on with those regs around the world. Thanks, Jason.
Awesome. Thank you both. That was great. And I think it'd be good to bring it all together now. So we've got a couple of minutes before we do some questions. So back over to yourself, Ben and Mel. Just in summary, what are the core pillars of safe and reliable AI that businesses should keep on top, or keep top of mind? Sorry.
Yeah. So for myself, Jason, it's accountability. Accountability. The 5 pillars are there for a really good reason, and each one has their own meaning and their use. But you are accountable as a business for making sure that you stick to them. So we need to make sure that we always drive fairness. We need to make sure that we always give transparent answers, that people's data is secure, and they have an ability to contest the response and contest where that data is stored. So accountability for me is the absolute primary pillar. Not only does it start with an A, but yeah, it should be number one, I think, for me anyway. Don't know about yourself, Mel. I don't know. You probably see it from a slightly different point of view with governance, but yeah.
I think with accountability, definitely governance, definitely accountability. But I also like to come at it from the contestability point of view, because I think contestability is about understanding how the customer can seek redress, and it's understanding how the customer may perceive the responses and all of those sorts of things, and making sure that customers understand that they do have the right to challenge a decision that's maybe gone against them. I don't know if people remember maybe the A-level problem back a few summers ago. Very personal to me because it affected my children, but that there was some poor algorithm and some poor business rules within that algorithm that actually suppressed children from certain schools and elevated children from other schools with their exam results. And it caused some havoc over the summer of 2020. But actually, what was actually impossible at the time was understanding, did we have the right to contest that decision? Because it was a sort of a blanket decision, came out across the whole of the UK, affected a vast number of children. But how did we even go about contesting that? So I think it's really important when you start to develop your AI that you actually think about the roots back and the feedback loops and how you actually ensure that your customers are actually feeling that things think they're being treated fairly. So I think that sort of points that all of them are actually quite key, doesn't it? It's sort of contestability, accountability, but actually the underpinning ones around fairness and transparency. So being able to stand by those answers, explain those answers, and be sure that you've not allowed creeping bias to get into your model. I think we've done some analysis around the different types of biases out there, and I think we're up to about 400 and something as an example of the different types of biases. So it's a really interesting and eye-opening subject, which is why you need human beings still in that process. You need your SMEs to be able to sort of bring their understanding of what looks credible and what looks good for them and what looks good for their customers. So yeah, it's all about the man in the machine, as we say. So thanks.
Brilliant. Awesome. Well, I think there's been some great insights from both Ben and Mel, so thank you. I'm conscious people might have another meeting at past, so I'm going to quickly take some Q&A. I think I'm just going to pick 2 questions from the 4 that we've got. The first one, I think, Mel, probably sits with you. So who should be accountable for AI policy within my organisation?
I think that's really interesting, and I think it sits as high as the top as you can get. It's accountability, obviously. So as with any sort of governance, the higher up the chain you can get, if you can get on the board, if you can get someone on the board to take accountability for that is obviously the best. Unique because you've got that sort of overarching oversight then, and the person on the board then can make sure that everything is cascaded down the organisation, and they've got the power and the influence in order to sort of make the right things happen. I think any governance people out there will know the frustration of trying to shout upwards through an organisation when you're trying to get that support at the board. So if you can start with the board and cascade it down, it's a lot easier. So go for your highest member of the board that you can get, a CEO. Definitely.
Preferably. Yeah. Definitely. Okay, no, brilliant. Thank you, Mel. And Ben, just one very quick one for you before I do some final wrap up. How do I know if my information is being used in training data?
That's a great question. And the answer to that is you need to take your accountability for your data. You need to, training data is out there. So if your information is in the public domain, it is quite possible and plausible that it is being used for training data. But what you need to do is take accountability when you actually use these tools and make sure that you don't put more data into them. So there's several which offer multiple layers of service, and many of those free layers will actually use the information that you put into them, the question that you ask them, for their next route of training data. So one of the, I've been guilty of this myself. I think most people will probably be able to put their hand up to this. You've put an email in or you've put something in, so you've checked your spelling, you've tried to find out if the grammar's correct or something along those lines. You've put that into one of the online chatbots and it returns an answer to you. But if you've done that for free or under a free plane, the chances are that's now been stored and that will be used as training data. Now, obviously, you have, as we've discussed through this, the ability to contest that and to ask for it to be removed and find out why it's being kept. But the word of caution there is that most of these are online web applications. They're run using cookie services. And that first time we log in, as we probably do to most websites these days, GDPR came out, everybody read that little cookie statement and maybe went into the T's and C's in the background and took a bit of a closer look. It's been a few years now, and I would hazard a guess that, like myself, most of us probably just click yes. And at that point, you've given up some of those rights to contest and get redressed for your data being there. So be aware, be cautious. It's about literacy. It's about awareness. Don't put in information, or if you want to put something in, take out all of the IP. So your names, the PPI, the person you're sending it to, anything that you think is a key value.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ben. Well, that actually brings us to the end of today's session. And we've overrun a little bit, so I appreciate everybody staying on because we actually still have quite high attendance at the moment. But first of all, a huge thanks to Ben and Mel, obviously, for sharing their expertise, and of course, to everybody else for taking time out of your morning to join this webinar. That's been really good. But just a few closing remarks from me. So if today's discussion resonated with you and you're looking to assess your AI maturity, then obviously please reach out to us for an AI maturity assessment. If you have any further questions or you want to explore any specific AI challenges in your business, again, just get in touch and we can continue the discussion. And don't forget, the recording of this webinar will be available, so feel free to revisit or share with your colleagues. And finally, stay tuned for our next webinar, where we'll keep the conversation going around AI readiness and adoption. And that's it. Thanks again, and see you next time.
Thanks all.
Thanks all.
Cheers.